The hatchling emerged from the cracked shell, trembling and blinking, at a world too bright and too vast. Alone, in the hidden cave the cool stone pressed against his tiny body, and the smell of earth and moss filled his nostrils. His wings were weak, and crumpled against his sides, and every instinct told him to hide, yet curiosity burned in his chest. He lifted his head and let out a small cry that echoed into the cavern, and was swallowed by silence. The sound of dripping water and distant wind were his only companions, and he pressed his tiny claws against the ground, trying to steady himself. The scales along his back shimmered faintly, catching the dim light, as though the cave itself had painted him with magic. He shivered and curled tighter. The echo of his heartbeat filled his ears, and he realized the world was bigger than he had imagined. A faint rumble in the distance made him freeze, and his ears flicked at every sound. The cave seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows moving and twisting across the walls, making shapes that were both fascinating and terrifying. He raised a trembling wing to test the air, and felt a shiver run down his spine. Every movement was exhausting and thrilling. At once the hatchling rolled onto his back and stared at the ceiling, wondering if he could ever fly, if he could ever leave this cave and see the forest beyond. He sniffed at the ground, tasting the cold stone, and something warmer drifting through the air that he did not recognize. A flutter of wings far away made his heart leap, and he crouched, ready to flee. Yet he was drawn forward by an invisible tug, curiosity and hunger for the unknown pulling him toward the opening. A faint glimmer of moonlight spilled across the mouth of the cave, and the hatchling hesitated, staring at the forest that lay just beyond the rocks. The scent of grass and water filled his senses, and a strange warmth touched him, as though the world itself was inviting him to step out. He lifted one claw and then another, testing the ground outside, and finally, with a shaky breath, he crawled toward the light, and the cool night air kissed his scales, and for the first time he felt the vastness of the world stretching before him. Trembling but alive, he lifted his head to the stars above, and wondered if anything in this forest would see him, and if anything could be friend or foe. He shivered with both fear and wonder, knowing this night was the first of many adventures he was not prepared for, and that something extraordinary might be waiting just beyond the first tree. The hatchling crept into the forest, heart hammering every step, cautious and trembling. Shadows stretched and twisted under the silver glow of the moon. Each leaf rustle made him freeze, claws digging into the soft earth. He sniffed the air, tasting scents of moss, wet bark, and something unfamiliar, a warmth that made his chest thrum. Curiosity pulled him forward, past twisted roots and sparkling streams. The water shimmered like liquid stars, and he peered at his reflection, wide eyes staring back at him. He hesitated, every instinct warning him of danger, yet something deeper urged him on, and then he saw movement just beyond a thicket, a pair of eyes reflecting moonlight, watching silently. The hatchling froze, muscles tense, wings tight against his back. Fear and fascination collided inside him. The human stepped forward slowly, kneeling in the soft mossy ground, hand extended, a gesture of peace, their eyes wide, gentle, and unthreatening. The forest seemed to pause, wind holding its breath, leaves suspended in midair, as though waiting for the moment to unfold. The hatchling tilted his head, unsure whether to flee or stay. The human did not speak, only waited patiently, radiating calm, a small smile playing at their lips. A firefly hovered between them, casting tiny sparks of light on scales and skin. The hatchling took a cautious step forward, then another, every heartbeat echoing in the silent forest. The human shifted slightly, offering warmth and safety. The hatchling sniffed at the hand, trembling with fear, excitement, and curiosity, and in that moment a fragile connection formed, a bond unspoken, a silent agreement that the forest was safe for now, and that the human meant no harm. The shadows seemed less threatening, and the rustling of leaves became a song. The world felt larger and stranger, yet somehow more welcoming than it had moments ago, and the hatchling realized that something unexpected had entered his life, something extraordinary, and perhaps the first of many wonders to come. The human remained, still waiting patiently. The hatchling froze, heart racing, every instinct screaming to run, yet curiosity held him in place, the air between them thick with tension and unspoken questions. Wind rustled the leaves above, casting moving shadows across moss and stones. The hatchling lifted a trembling wing, testing the air, and then lowered it again, unsure what to do. The human extended a hand slowly, palm up, the glow of moonlight catching the tips of their fingers. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first touch. The hatchling inched forward, nose twitching, claws scraping soft dirt, every heartbeat loud in his ears. Images of the cave and the vast unknown flashed in his mind, fear, uncertainty, excitement all mixed together. He lowered his head closer to the hand, sniffing at the warmth and scent of the human. Curiosity overpowered caution for a moment, and he brushed a tiny claw against the hand. Soft and hesitant, the human did not move, only smiled gently, and waited, offering comfort and patience. A leaf drifted down, landing on the hatchling's nose, causing him to sneeze, startling him yet breaking some of the tension. He blinked and tilted his head, unsure if this was play or some strange ritual. The human laughed softly, a sound like warmth and sunlight filling the quiet of the forest. The hatchling felt a flicker of trust ignite, a small spark of hope, that perhaps this creature meant no harm, that perhaps the vast, frightening world beyond the cave had a friend hidden in it. The moonlight fell over them, both illuminating scales and skin shadows dancing around them, as if celebrating the fragile connection forming in the silence, and the hatchling realized he was not alone in this strange new world, that someone understood fear and curiosity, and in that moment he felt something stirring deep in his chest, something like courage or wonder, or maybe both, something that whispered that life outside the cave could be beautiful if he dared to take the first step. The hatchling hesitated, paw hovering above the ground, wings quivering, every muscle tense, yet curiosity and something warmer pulled him. Closer the human remained, still, hand extended, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The forest seemed to wait with them, shadows stretching long across roots and moss. The hatchling sniffed at the hand, twitching his whiskers, and flinched. Then, in a sudden spark of courage, brushed a tiny claw against the human's palm. A warmth spread through him like sunlight on cold stone. The human did not pull back, only smiled gently, allowing the touch to linger. A leaf floated down, drifting across the hatchling's snout, and he sneezed, startled the sound, echoing in the quiet night. The human laughed softly, a sound that felt like comfort and safety. The hatchling pressed closer, head brushing, fingers claws. Trembling, he felt a strange thrill in his chest, something unfamiliar and thrilling, trust beginning to thread its way through his fear. The forest held its breath, birds, silent, leaves still, even the wind softened, as though celebrating. The moment the hatchling lifted a tiny wing, testing the air, and then lowered it again, the human shifted, slightly, offering warmth without moving too quickly. The hatchling sniffed at the orb of light the human had carried in the folds of their cloak, and a pulse of gentle magic brushed against his scales, making them shimmer brighter than before. Excitement and awe surged inside him. He stepped closer, resting his tiny head against the human's hand for a heartbeat. The first spark of connection, a fragile bond forming without words, without sound. The forest whispered. Around them, a quiet chorus of rustling leaves and distant water, and the hatchling felt something stir in his chest, a new feeling, courage, mixed with trust and wonder, that whispered the world beyond the cave could be less frightening, that perhaps life could hold something extraordinary if he dared to reach for it. And he realized for the first time that he might not be alone after all. The human extended their palm, revealing a small glowing orb hovering just above their hand, light rippling across the hatchling's shimmering scales. His eyes widened and his tiny wings twitched with both fear and awe. Warmth radiated from the orb, pulsing like a heartbeat, reaching into his chest, filling him with a strange courage and excitement. He took a cautious step closer, sniffing at the gentle glow, claws brushing soft moss. The human did not speak, only waited patiently, letting the hatchling decide, letting trust grow stronger. The orb pulsed again, sending a wave of light over him, making scales glimmer and wings flutter. The hatchling lifted a trembling wing, testing the air, as the warmth of the gift filled him with a strength he had never known. Fear and wonder collided in his mind. Yet he could not look away. He realized the gift was more than magic. It was connection, guidance, and possibility, all at once, and in that moment he knew his life had changed forever. The hatchling trembled, wings folded tightly against his sides. The glowing orb, pulsing gently in the human's hand, gave him courage and a strange, steady warmth. He could feel it in his chest like a heartbeat that matched his own. The human knelt, quietly letting him feel the power without pressure. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, shadows soft and silvered by the moonlight. The hatchling lifted one claw, testing the ground, then another, wings twitching frantically. He flapped once and fell forward, landing with a soft thump. The orb glimmered brighter, sending a pulse of reassurance into his chest, and he tried again, spreading wings wide, trembling at the effort. Air brushing against scales and moss, he leaped and flapped, beating the air clumsily for a heartbeat. He rose a foot to feet, panic surged, claws scrabbling at nothing, but he kept flapping. The orb pulsed faster, as if cheering him on. Courage, feeding courage, excitement filling him with a new rhythm. The wind rushed past his ears, and the scent of trees, water, and moss filled his senses. The human called, softly voiced, gentle and calm, guiding him with gestures and subtle pulses of the orb. Light brushing scales, wings catching it as if learning to dance. Together every attempt brought him higher, a stumble, a fall, a beat of hesitation, followed by a surge of determination. The hatchling rose above the forest floor, brushing treetops, trembling wings, beating faster and surer. The forest blurred beneath him, sparkling streams shining like veins of silver. The orb pulsed in perfect rhythm, filling him with warmth, confidence, and awe. Exhilaration surged through every feather, soft scale, and fragile claw. For the first time he felt flying not as fear or accident but as freedom, pure and wild. He darted, twisting, turning, testing air currents, and following the soft gestures of the human below. His shadow dancing on the mossy ground like a living spark. The human clapped softly, celebrating silently. The tiny dragon's first flight. The forest seemed to hum approval as stars twinkled in rhythm, and the hatchling felt for the first time that he was ready to explore the world beyond the cave. The gift had given him wings, courage, and wonder, and he knew nothing would ever feel the same again. The night air rushing past his scales filled him with a joy he could not name, only the certainty that the human and the glowing gift had changed everything. Days passed, and the hatchling and the human explored the forest together, every leaf, every branch, every sparkling stream, a new adventure waiting for tiny claws and trembling wings. The hatchling learned to trust the human, following gentle gestures and soft calls. The orb pulsed lightly in his chest, guiding him when paths were unclear, and whispering courage when fear crept in. They discovered hidden glades where moonlight danced on dew-covered grass, ancient trees stretching higher than the eye could see, and ponds that reflected stars like pools of liquid sky. The hatchling practiced flapping, gliding, and perching, the human patient beside him, offering warmth and steady hands when balance failed. Over time, the forest became a playground, a classroom, a world of endless wonder for the hatchling, and he began to understand loyalty and care. The human laughed softly as the hatchling tumbled from a branch and rolled into a bed of moss, giggling in his own way through chirps and tiny squeals. The orb pulsed brighter when they found a particularly high branch or a tricky path, teaching courage through gentle magic and guidance. Nights were spent side by side under the starlight, the hatchling resting his head on the human's hand, listening to heartbeat and soft breathing, a bond growing stronger without words, a silent understanding forming between creature and human that spoke of friendship, trust, and the beginnings of something extraordinary. Every day brought lessons of patience, courage, and joy, and every night the hatchling dreamed of flying higher, of exploring farther, knowing that with the human and the glowing gift by his side, the world could be beautiful, thrilling, and full of wonders he had never imagined before. The forest no longer felt frightening, but alive, full of possibilities, and every shadow shimmered with mystery, waiting for the hatchling to leap, glide, and discover all that life had to offer under the watchful, gentle presence of his human companion. A sudden storm broke over the forest, lightning split the sky, and thunder rolled across the hills. The hatchling froze, wings pressed tight against his sides. Rain pelted down in sheets, cold and sharp. The wind whipped through the trees, bending branches and sending leaves flying. The human called softly, voice steady and calm, reaching out a guiding hand. The hatchling trembled, panic and fear twisting in his chest. The orb glowed brightly, pulsing like a heartbeat, and warmth spread through him, easing terror into courage. Step by trembling step he followed the human through slippery moss and tangled roots. The forest became a maze of shadows, and roaring wind branches snapped dangerously close, and water rushed through the low areas, making tiny streams into torrents. The hatchling flapped wings to maintain balance, each gust threatening to topple him. The human held the orb, highlight spilling across leaves and branches, creating a path. The hatchling felt trust and fear intertwining, strength building with every careful movement. They dodged falling branches and leaped across small pools of rushing water. The orb's gentle pulse guided him, teaching him to anticipate the wind, to trust the human, and to trust himself. They finally reached shelter beneath the twisted roots of an ancient tree. The hatchling shivered but felt the warmth of the orb, and the human beside him, a bond stronger than any fear or storm. The hatchling realized the gift was more than magic. It was courage, protection, trust, and love, woven together, and in that moment he understood that he could face storms of wind and rain, of shadow and fear, so long as the human and the glowing gift were with him. The forest hummed softly around them, the storm Continuing outside but inside, the hatchling felt safe, strong, and alive, ready for anything. The night held dawn broke golden across the forest, painting leaves and streams with warm light. The hatchling stretched wings fully for the first time, strong and sure muscles coiling and releasing in perfect rhythm. The orb pulsed, gently merging its glow with the shimmer of his scales, warmth and light flowing through him, courage, joy, and wonder surging together. He lifted from the branch, heart hammering, excitement and freedom rushing through every feather and claw. The human watched from below, hand raised softly, cheering silently. The hatchling twisted and darted through beams of sunlight, testing currents and gliding effortlessly higher than ever before. The forest blurred beneath him, sparkling rivers winding through trees, ancient roots and mossy stones flashing past as he soared higher, still wind rushing past, scales glimmering in the golden light every beat of his wings. A thrill of power and trust, the orb pulsed softly, guiding without controlling, letting him feel strength and mastery together. They rose higher than the tallest trees above the clouds, brushing at the tips of sunlight and mist. The hatchling felt joy in every flutter of his wings, every glance at the horizon, endless possibilities stretching beyond the forest into a world full of wonder and adventure. He swooped and twisted, laughing through chirps and soft squeals, knowing he was ready for anything. The gift had given him courage, guidance, and trust, and the human had given him love, patience, and friendship. The forest seemed to cheer with rustling leaves and birds calling as if celebrating the transformation. The hatchling dipped and soared, merging magic and heart into flight, feeling complete, alive, and unafraid. The horizon stretched forever, a canvas for new adventures, and every beat of wings whispered promise and hope for the countless wonders yet to come. Together they flew side by side, the human and the hatchling, the gift of friendship, magic, and trust carrying them into the endless sky where nothing was impossible and everything awaited.